Flashback to Hector as a kid. He finds a dead dog, cries about it, and then hits 2 coins together until that brings the dog back without the missing body chunks. Still missing. In the present, he summons a demon and calms it down with care. Hector is a caring man, that even in his dislike of mankind he seeks a middle term and abhors the genocide plan, putting him in direct opposition to Isaac. All of that would be quite interesting in a different timeline. First, we pretty much burned through this already, with the vocal flashbacks and his expository conversation with Godbrand. On episode 1, this 2-minute long scene is pointless. Second, what are those coins? How the hell do you stumble on them? Or the knowledge on how to use them? As far as I can tell, the power behind the Forge Master tool comes partially from the Forge Master. If I give the tool to some rando, they won't know what to do with it. So how does a kid even intuit this kind of magic? He even put the coins on the hammer because the coins being on a larger object means the magic still works as long as the object hits another object. That's how that works, I guess. Third, you are dead. You were an incel living on your own doing nothing but raising dogs. The demon wakes up and immediately attacks. You are dead. And fourth, the demon has a blue glow in his eyes, like the one that killed the bishop. Can't he make more of the talking ones? They could be really useful. Stupid! Carmilla enters the room. If you didn't get it, considering how subtle the whole thing is, she's trying to recruit him. She figured he would be the weak link, and now wants to convince him to send a party to the Belmont Hold and attack Brayla, which he won't do because Dracula needs to give the green light.
But your intellect cannot be denied.
All of this is meaningless, of course. We know what the proper strategy is. The more important thing is the fact that this entire conversation already happened. Dracula already seemed convinced of the Brayla plan.
Taking Brayla seals off one side of Wallachia.
Interesting, Hector.
And the Belmont search is just logical. But now he isn't convinced, and we need to use underhanded tactics to force that to happen. And that is me pretending this makes any sense, since Dracula already put them as the leaders of the extermination. Specifically because he just doesn't care how that happens, as long as it happens.
They will suffer.
The suffering doesn't really matter to me anymore, Isaac. Only the death.
Warren Ellis ran out of ideas, so much so the other half of the conversation is just contrived exposition. When Dracula recruited him, Hector made clear that he didn't want to kill all humans, and yet Dracula recruited him anyway.
The world would be poorer with their extinction. I would just see to it that they couldn't harm anyone else.
Flying in the face of his decision earlier.
But we are about the business of wiping humanity from the earth. And they still stand with me.
Clearly they don't. Dracula seems to be aware of that as he's visibly lying to Hector and gets away with it, because Hector is an idiot.
Oh, yes. I can promise a merciful end to the human plague, Hector.
Idiotic!
The stupid, vicious, spiteful, evil humans.
I am really getting tired of the whole all humans are scheming evil bastards spiel coming out of literally corrupted humans. If I could transport myself into this universe, I would love to ask Alucard and Dracula pre-insanity why aren't they surrounded by vampire friends when they are so bothered about mankind? Or why Alucard has a demon-slaying sword. I'm sure they would have a very amusing answer. Moving on, Carmilla convinces him.
Make some troops that you can trust completely with whatever they find, and then help me convince Dracula to attack Brayla.
And we cut to the heroes arriving at the Belmont lands. Trevor reminisces about a JPEG he used to play in, and we run into the most filler-filled sequence in the entire series.
This was your home.
Yeah.
You grew up here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get to the more interesting parts. Trevor implies his childhood wasn't very fun. He did so before, but I avoided mentioning it because as I rewatched it, I didn't recall his family ever being mentioned, at least not in detail, save for one of his ancestors. I thought he was talking about how he was brought up, implying his parents weren't good at parenting. But as it turned out, the excommunication happened when he was a kid.
How old were you when your family home was taken?
13, 14, something.
Which was very confusing. The opening shows a grown Trevor being held by priests or something, bleeding from the wound that gave him his signature scar while the Belmont mansion burns. Trevor himself said,
If vanished is the polite way of saying exiled, hated, and burned out of the ancestral home, then...
And the amount of time since the death of the Belmonts was kept vague. I thought that was all in different points in time. So his parents didn't die in the fire?
Been on your own since you were 13?
Maybe 12.
So they did, right? Does that mean he learned all of his skills when he was in his teens? Was he actually hunting vampires as a kid? Just him and his mini plot armor. And he somehow stayed in shape all of this time after giving up. He couldn't be hunting recently because nobody heard of him before, so he has been fighting with the skill level of a 14-year-old.
It'd be funny if it weren't so pathetic. No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.
What a convoluted way of telling a story. Just go with the bad parenting angle. Have the Belmonts be around for a little longer. Makes more sense that way. And you still get the antisocial angle for him. Why do anything like this? Moving on, they find the door to the Belmont bunker. It is magic. Trevor never found out how to open it, Alucard can't brute force it, so Cypher has to do it.
They knew a lot, but this door was put in by one of our ancestors. They brought me through it once it was open. They told me they'd teach me how to do it one day. I suppose there was a special trick.
Your parents knew the trick, but didn't know where it came from, or what it really was.
So the Belmonts are indeed idiots. Good to know. She reads some writing on the door and recites an incantation that makes the door emit some blue smoke and light in the shape of wings. Then the door disappears into thin air.
Was that an Enochian ward?
Yes.
The alleged language of the angels. I'm not repeating myself. On the way down, Cypher randomly asks where the Belmont name comes from, and Trevor tells her they are actually French.
No. The family's originally from the Kingdom of France.
They came to Valleyke because evil came east, following Dracula, I assume, leading one of his ancestors, Leon Belmont, here, where he established a base of operations. This mansion that would go on to bring about some of the most stupid monster hunters in fiction. They had access to magic, including occult, holy magic, and the only thing they used to do their job was plot armor. That's just beautiful.
No one told me that.
The rest of the sequence is Trevor vocally pointing out what this place means to him and his family.
The memory of my family. All that's left of us.
In case you don't get it, Alucard pretended to be bothered about this place being a treasury of vampire slaying, as if he isn't the only good vampire, and Cypher reading a book. Oh, and Trevor finds the Morning Star, a flail that elongates itself whenever the plot needs it to. It was being kept inside a chest that was enchanted against literally nothing. From there we cut to Godbrand questioning Dracula's plan, since they won't have anything to feed on. Dracula threatens him, calls him trash, and tells him to get out, then sits down with some difficulty, as if he's physically exhausted. Godbrand meets Carmilla on his way out and tells her Dracula is insane and likely weak because he's not drinking. He storms off and Carmilla super speed kicks him down the stairs, so she can get him to focus on convincing Dracula to take the castle to Brayla, because she fell in love with and was then turned by some vampire that later became senile and mean, so she killed him and became a feminist. And now Dracula is also senile and mean, and her feminism demands she kills him.
Never again.
First, what a long and stupid way of getting exposition out of feminism incarnate over here. All she had to do was agree with Godbrand and tell him her plan to kill Dracula. Who the hell asked her anything about her life? Second, nice moves there. I wonder how a human is even supposed to deal with that. And finally, if you want to write a story, always remember to avoid repeating yourselves. Godbrand has a dream where he hunts down humans somewhere. and screams his own name like a Pokemon.
Godbrand! Godbrand!
Which makes him thirsty, so he asks some red shirt vampires for blood and receives a pig. That convinces him into agreeing with Carmilla's inane exposition.
Some things must be done.
That was 2 whole minutes for something that could have been implied from the previous episode.
Some things.
From there we cut to Trevor finding a broken magic mirror. It's about the size of a mirror that anyone could have in their house.
What the hell is this?
I'll talk about it in a few minutes. Throughout the scene, Trevor, Cypher and Alucard have a back and forth that is supposed to sound like a conversation, from an alien point of view.
You don't know?
I don't know.
This is your house.
Yes, he literally said he doesn't know what to do with anything here.
But my family stored everything they found. Books of magic and whatever other weird stuff they came across. I just can't do anything with it.
We've been through this already.
Some of them even allow matter to pass through them, but no, this is a simple remote viewing mirror.
Really? Now tell me, what is the point of mentioning that beyond causing problems in the script?
Some of them even allow matter to pass.
The Belmonts are idiots, and so are your parents.
You have the most fascinating family junkyard, Belmont.
You're a c***wart, Alucard.
Stop it. You are an adult.
That did not even sound like an actual fight. None of their banter sounded serious.
You do not have to rise to his every barb.
Are we actually pretending they are fighting?
Grow up, Trevor. Why is your name Trevor, anyway?
Do you have ADHD? The hell does that have to do with anything?
Trevor doesn't sound very local either.
What?
And his name was Trefor, with an F.
Treffy?
Oh my god, no.
Oh wow! This is supposed to build a relationship between the two of them, while reinforcing the aspect of social displacement Alucard has. But they don't know how to do any of it, so it's just nonsense. Wow!
Don't.
Back at the castle, Carmilla convinces Hector to take her side.
Why would I go against his wishes?
Dracula has failed his own people.
Except this time, she just spills the beans about the forces she has in Brayla. She is going to take over from Dracula and carry out the plan of turning humans into cattle instead of full genocide.
My own forces will take the castle and unseat Dracula.
And Hector agrees, because Dracula promised that was always the plan, and it took him until now to realize he was obviously lying.
That humans would be reduced in numbers and controlled.
Making Hector soft-hearted enough to not be able to tell when someone he trusts is lying to him would be fine, if Dracula was actually trying to lie.
To understand why they all must die.
He isn't. In his introduction, Dracula said out loud what he was going to do. Him not noticing that would just be stupid, if he was really into the cattle plan at the time, which he wasn't.
There is more wanton bloodshed than I would like. I don't love the rest of humanity. I want to share a world with them, but the suffering.
Implying, finally, that you'd rather it be swift, right? Interesting. He just became like that, from one episode to the other. And I sure do hope Hector doesn't arrive at another stupidly incorrect conclusion with Carmilla, someone he literally didn't know until recently and has no reason to trust. That would be dumb.
He was traveling like a human at her whim. Not once did he move to protect her.
I would congratulate the show for bringing that up, but since it cannot possibly offer an answer without the story falling apart, it gets nothing.
Not once did he consider making her a vampire and bringing her into our community.
Flashback to Dracula recruiting Isaac. It's just one massive exposition dump where the only things I note are Dracula asking to be invited into the threshold of Isaac's home.
Invite me across your threshold, Isaac.
Because vampires aren't a hellish corruption of mankind, and Dracula claiming the human race betrayed him one final time.
The human race has betrayed me for one final time.
Back to current day, Godbrand takes the nameless, speechless vampire generals to hunt, using undead horses. And I'm going to skip ahead and mention that the only thing of worth that happens in that hunt is the Japanese vampire being able to turn into mist, because that's something they can do. Meanwhile, Dracula uses a magic mirror about the size of the one in the Belmont Hold. He inscribes some runes in it, which makes the image of a beautiful grove appear, and then he tosses the cloth that covered the mirror through it. It really is their fault at this point. They knew the cultural situation around Europe, they knew what people were capable of, and they had the fastest method of transportation on the planet readily available, and did nothing with that. And the best part is that the scene doesn't even serve any other purpose beyond establishing this as a thing. It's a really sad Chekhov's gun. He removes the cloth like the mirror is always there, when it wasn't, sets a destination he won't use, and walks away. Amazing how a single chip in the story can break it apart completely. What a great idea. He leaves his room and goes to Isaac's lab for a conversation. Apparently he picked up on everyone, including Hector, acting different towards him, and has come to the conclusion that Isaac might be the only one who truly understands him, the only friend he has.
You, Isaac, are the only one I've told the truth to.
But, since the entire plan is as stupid as it gets, since half of the conversation is lampshading Hector's stupidity, since Dracula barely interacts with anyone in the building, and the only reason he was able to notice the change was because apparently everyone couldn't be any more obvious if they tried, this entire scene just falls flat. Moving on. In the Belmont bunker, Trevor's trying to sleep, and Cypher is feeling lonely. Because all of the other scenes of this trio only happen in my mind and I need to take my meds. I figured she would still be missing her family, but the implication seems to be that she has created no sense of camaraderie with these two, especially with Alucard. She says that both Trevor and Alucard are sad in their own ways, except she can get through to Trevor with shouting and teasing, and yet she still feels lonely, but she can't get through to Alucard, because his depression is deeper.
His sadness is like an icy well. It's bottomless.
If that is the case, then what is this?
He die. Yes, you. But you know that the word Telok means of death, right?
Shut up.
It's the magical door of death, Belmont.
You cannot tell me that that is just to keep appearances. Trevor uses sarcasm to hide his feelings. Alucard doesn't. He just doesn't talk about it. And yet, he actively banters with Trevor. He instigates it. How is that not getting through? This conversation doesn't make sense. She should hit it off with him a lot more than with Trevor. Their dynamic should work. Putting sad piano over this conversation won't suddenly negate that.
And offer me your stinky blanket.
Removing the banter would, if he was quiet most of the time and only spoke when spoken to, and in matters regarding Dracula, then she would make sense. As it is, this just looks like the extrovert friend that couldn't talk with the introvert in the group and made some drama about it.
Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
But I can't wait for the conclusion of this little drama. At the castle, Godbrand tries to convince Isaac to follow Carmilla's plan.
How did Dracula draft you into his service, I wonder?
In what universe did he or her think the quiet, tattooed, self-flagellating weirdo was someone they could bring into the fold? The guy that was quick to insult Godbrand just recently.
Tie you up outside with the rest of the animals.
This entire scene is stupid.
Alucard knows almost as much as Dracula himself, and is almost as strong.
Really? Keep that in mind for the rest of this franchise. While Godbrand is leaving, Isaac wraps his flail around his neck, overpowers him, pulls the flail back, which tears open Godbrand's jugular, and when he falls on the ground, Isaac uses his dagger to kill Godbrand. No, just no. It's already a stretch to have Trevor winning against a vampire, but now you just gotta be kidding me. Isaac did nothing but study or be a slave his whole life. He shouldn't have been able to kill the Templar scholar the way he did, let alone the goddamn vampire. Godbrand was strong enough to break a sword to pieces with a single move, to survive falls that would severely injure or downright kill a human. Why is he behaving like a normal person while being choked to death? Throughout the struggle, he should have killed Isaac multiple times by mistake. And why the hell can the dagger kill vampires? Because it can make zombies and demons. Is Alucard's sword made out of that too? How come the Belmonts don't have a bunch of those? What the hell was any of that? Anyway, that confirms treason among the generals, and I bet you can easily tell what he's going to do with that information. Isaac makes a whole symbolic ritual to spread Godbrand's ashes from the top of the castle. Anything for filler. Meanwhile, Carmilla is talking with her female forces using a magic mirror. Vampire General number 4 shows up to gesticulate his failure in finding Godbrand, meaning it wasn't part of her plan to use Godbrand's persuasion skills to convince Isaac to join her side. He is just stupid for doing that, she is stupid for not telling him to not do that. At the Belmont Hold, Sypha and Alucard talk to each other.
You know, coming from an oral memory-based culture, you're very good with books.
As it turns out, Alucard is bothered about Trevor's overall personality.
I am concerned I have thrown my lot in with a demented infant.
Alucard is a mature, focused, and rational vampire.
He discovered an entire box of spells about penises.
You're certain it was one of his ancestors?
And Trevor is pretty much his polar opposite. So the distrust would be understandable if we had done anything at all with it. We are running with the idea that they are seriously beefing, yet we have done nothing to reinforce that as an aspect of the story, to a point that you could just leave them with this relationship and the outcome would be the same. It doesn't influence anything. And if you don't get it,
You're afraid. You worry that you might have made the wrong choice.
I guess the battle for an entire city did nothing to bond these two. Sypha finds a clue regarding Dracula's castle, and Alucard casually mentions the fact that he grew to adulthood extremely fast.
I'm being literal. I aged very quickly.
Which brings back the question of his location during the witch hunt. But we ain't never going to talk about that again. Meanwhile, outside the castle, Hector convinces Isaac to go to Brayla.
What do you say?
Well,
He knows there is betrayal at the court.
there are people in the court who have their own plans, their own agendas.
He knows Carmilla is involved.
It will please Camilla, so I distrust it.
She's obviously trying to betray you all. She's about as subtle as a nuclear bomb, and he goes with it anyway.
I imagine it would even make Godbrand smile.
He did nothing with that knowledge.
Keep walking. Vampires have sharp ears, and you said we needed to talk.
They should have an enhanced hearing, and yet they don't hear anything, do they?
I used to liken them to wolves or bats. A strong sense of community.
Where did you get that from? You only met one vampire your entire life that you spent inside your house, making zombies.
You think of vampires as animals.
They are pure creatures. They have grace. Animals don't act with malice.
Cats play with their food all the time.
But it's not malicious. There's joy in it.
A thinking being can't find joy in being malicious, and vampires can think. Idiotic! The show keeps talking about you being a kid in a man's body.
He's a child in a man's body.
But you weren't a kid when you killed your parents.
Hector, unlock this door at once! Are you burning something out there?
And you certainly weren't a kid in the War Council.
Our goals can be met without gleefully paddling in the blood of children.
So where did that comparison come from? Back at the castle, Hector has already sent demons to the Belmont Hold.
A quick, orderly, and merciful war.
Because thousands of flying fire-spitting demons is not the quick and orderly method they should have gone with from the beginning. Meanwhile, Isaac gets exposition on the mirror.
Carpathian.
The last of the mirrors made by the Carpathian scrying hermits.
I must learn more about transmission mirrors.
Dracula is becoming senile. Most of the scene is him reminiscing about the time some merchants were mean to him, so he destroyed that entire city over it. But he didn't kill anyone though, beyond the merchants. So, he just destroyed everything those people worked for and left them in the dirt, because vampires are not a bunch of and are totally a community. Hector and Camilla show up and convince him to go to Brayla.
To conduct a full-scale destructive attack on the port.
To what end?
To seal it.
Taking Brayla seals off one side of Wallachia.
Interesting, Hector.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. Intel has told us there are at least 7.
Okay, I already see one. Give him. Okay.
They're the same picture.
Everyone in this room is sharing one brain cell and is already dead. On their way out, Carmilla reveals to Hector that she's a feminist, because that's how she has ever been.
Because I am surrounded by children and animals and dying old men. There are perhaps 4 other women in this castle, and they will glare from the edges, either disempowered by fostering man-children, or too paralyzed by sheer fucking rage to do anything.
Everything she has managed to accomplish was entirely dependent of everyone in this room being as stupid as she is, and the plot making her aware of that. You are all stupid beyond belief, and now you're trying to make this about sexes? The other female dogs in the room have about as much voice as the men, which is none, because they don't speak. They are not characters.
Disempowered by posturing man-children.
They are vampires. Their power works in the same way, only changing sometimes for no reason. One of them can literally kill everyone in the castle. The only reason she doesn't is because Warren Ellis avoids showing it. She can turn to mist, and she doesn't have a voice. Carmilla is a moronic cat lady, and that's all she'll ever be for the rest of the show. She literally tells him this is a ploy to put her in power, something he had every reason to realize from the beginning, and he decides to not go back to cancel the request and snitch on her, because as she was written to say, he's implicated on it.
Now you're implicated, so I didn't need to.
Telling Dracula ahead of time would save him and the entire operation. You could even spin that to get the drop on her forces, eliminating all opposition.
It'd be funny if it weren't so pathetic.
In the Belmont Hold, we waste 2 minutes to get to the point.
Trevor!
What?
I have something.
When I say what, that doesn't mean...
Cypher found an incomplete spell that will allow them to trap Dracula's castle in a single place.
It's all based on Adamical structures. Adamic is the original human language, the one spoken by Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, the one that was split into all other languages at the Tower of Babel by God to prevent human cooperation.
Is that how you understand that story?
Oh yes, the speakers are the enemy of God. We live in cooperation and hide our stories inside ourselves so we cannot strike them down in jealousy.
Anyway, Hector's forces have arrived. Luckily the door rematerialized earlier, so they will have to brute force it.
See? God hates me.
Whatever they are doing shakes the entire bunker. For that amount of power, it must be some dangerous demons out there. This fight should be awesome.
That's probably not God.